Imagine standing at the foot of a mountain range, gazing up at the towering peaks that seem to touch the sky. As you look around, you realize that the road ahead will be long and challenging, filled with steep climbs and rough terrain. But something inside you tells you to keep going. So you take the first step, then another and another until slowly but surely you reach the top. The view from the summit is breathtaking. You feel like you can conquer anything. Welcome to our channel, where today we're going to talk about a hero of the faith named Elijah who moved a mountain. In his time, the people of Israel were living in a spiritual desert, far away from the living God. They had turned their backs on Yahweh and embraced the worship of Baal, a false god. Hundreds of Baal prophets misled them, claiming that he was the one true God. This meant that true worship of Yahweh was almost forgotten. There was no hope for change, or so it seemed. Then God raised up Elijah, a man who didn't compromise his faith. Elijah knew that the people had strayed from the path of righteousness, and he was determined to bring them back. He wasn't afraid to speak the truth, even if it meant going against the king and queen. King Ahab and his wife Jezebel ruled over Israel at the time, and they were leading the nation deeper into sin. Ahab allowed Baal worship to flourish, and Jezebel persecuted those who remained faithful to Yahweh. But Elijah wasn't intimidated by their power. He knew that God was on his side. One day Elijah gathered all the prophets of Baal and challenged them to a contest on Mount Carmel. He told them to build 2 altars, one for Yahweh and the other for Baal. Each altar would have an offering, and the God who answered with fire would be the true God. The prophets of Baal accepted the challenge, and for hours they cried out to their God, danced before the altar, and shouted at the top of their lungs. But there was no answer. Complete silence. When it was Elijah's turn, he prayed a simple yet powerful prayer. And just as he finished, God sent fire down from heaven, consumed the offering, the wood, the stones, and even the water Elijah had poured on the ground. The people were stunned. They had witnessed God's power firsthand, and they fell to their knees, confessing that Yahweh was the one true God. But what does this story teach us today? Let's dive deeper and discover the valuable lessons hidden within. First, we learn the importance of remaining strong in our faith. Elijah didn't let the opposition of the wicked shake his belief in God. He stood firm and trusted that God would help him expose the false prophets and restore true worship in Israel. This reminds us that in times of trouble and temptation, we should hold fast to our faith and resist the forces that seek to pull us away from God. Second, we see the value of courage in the face of adversity. Elijah wasn't afraid to stand up against the prophets of Baal and challenge them to a test of their faith. He faced them head-on and boldly proclaimed Yahweh's supremacy. This teaches us that we shouldn't be intimidated by those who oppose us, but should have the courage to defend our beliefs and values. Third, we observe the need for humility in our prayers. Elijah didn't pray with arrogance or self-righteousness, but with humility and faith. He recognized his dependence on God and trusted in his power to answer his prayer. This reminds us that when we pray, we should come before God with a humble heart, acknowledging our weaknesses and trusting in his strength. Fourth, we witness the power of unwavering commitment. Elijah didn't give up in his mission to restore Israel's faith in Yahweh, even though he faced persecution and danger. He remained steadfast and faithful, knowing that his efforts would ultimately lead to the triumph of good over evil. This teaches us that we shouldn't quit in the face of challenges and setbacks, but should stay committed to our goals and trust that God will help us achieve them. Fifth, we learn the importance of obedience to God's voice. Elijah didn't just act on his own ideas or plans, but listened carefully to God's instructions. He received divine guidance and followed it closely, which led to the ultimate success of his mission. This reminds us that we should be attentive to God's voice and obey his commands, for they will lead us to the right path. Now, let's think about how we can apply these lessons to our daily lives. When faced with challenges, temptations, or opposition, let us remain strong in our faith. Like Elijah, trusting that God will help us overcome any obstacle. Let us also be courageous in defending our beliefs and not be intimidated by those who oppose us. Remember, great faith often moves great mountains. When we pray, let us come with a humble heart, acknowledging our weaknesses and dependence on God's strength. Let us not forget that true faith is accompanied by humility. Let us also be committed and not give up in the face of challenges, knowing that God is with us every step of the way. Finally, Let us learn to listen attentively to God's voice and obey His commands, for He will guide us to the right path. We can't deny that life is full of challenges and difficulties. Sometimes it may seem as if the weight of our problems is too great to bear, as if the mountains in front of us are insurmountable. However, just as Elijah moved the mountain on Mount Carmel, reminding us that with God, nothing is impossible. When we trust in Him and have faith in His power, we can overcome any obstacle that comes our way. Remember, true faith moves mountains. It doesn't matter how big or complex our problems may seem. If we put our trust in God, He will help us solve them. Just as Elijah confronted the prophets of Baal and emerged victorious, we too can face our fears and doubts. When we stand firm in our faith and do intent, let anyone or anything shake our belief in God. Never forget that you have the strength and ability to overcome any difficulty. You can move your mountains through prayer, asking God for help and guidance. Through faith, believing that He will support you in your struggles. And with perseverance, continuing to move forward, no matter how challenging the journey may be. Keep in mind that God is always with you, ready to lend a hand and offer His strength whenever you need it. Trust in His power and believe that together you can move any mountain. In conclusion, the story of Elijah and the prophets of Baal teaches us that with unwavering faith in God, we can overcome any challenge and achieve seemingly impossible tasks. We must remain strong in our faith, be courageous in the face of adversity, humble in our prayers, committed in our actions, and obedient to God's voice. By following these principles, we can move the mountains in our lives and live a life of purpose and meaning. Do you feel inspired by Elijah's story? Tell us in the comments how his example of faith has impacted you. Also, if you want to continue growing in your walk with God, subscribe and click the bell so you do, and miss out on new videos that will help you on your spiritual journey. Together, let us continue learning and strengthening our faith in God, who is the author and finisher of our faith. Till next time.